Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the Super League and some continued thoughts about that and why I think you probably don't have to worry about it at least for the next little bit. But now let's talk about Bama. Let's do a little check-in on the Crimson Tide, see how they're doing with a new head coach. Obviously, the DeBoer era started back in, I believe, January. The timeline is so fuzzy at this point. It feels like it was years ago. But Nick Saban retired. Life changed in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, very quickly. I've gotten into the hiring process a little bit here. Greg Byrne did an incredible job handling this. They had two guys really at the front of the table. It was Mike Norvell and their now head coach, Kalen DeBoer. So, although they did get some raises for some other coaches along the way, which is always a nice thing for those coaches. But there's been a lot of things that have happened since then. He has been essentially thrown into a situation that no one really envies. No one is necessarily going crazy trying to get in his position because the pressure is just off the charts. So let's kind of go into how he's handled that, the couple of hurdles that he's had to go through, and then get to the reality of this situation and what I kind of expect from him. So first, let's start with the portal, because that was where kind of the story was right after Saban retired. There was 30 players on their way out of the program. That was that post-Saban portal. A couple of guys entered earlier, but there were a ton of guys that found their way out, including Isaiah Bond, their reception leader from a year ago, and then Caleb Downs, their leading tackler. So two huge guys on either side of the ball that you absolutely would love to have in Tuscaloosa that found their way out. Isaiah Bond is now at Texas. Caleb Downs is now at Ohio State. So there's a chance you will be seeing those guys in postseason football if you're the Crimson Tide. But then the reload started because it absolutely had to. They had some guys going off to the NFL. Obviously, the portal hit was huge, so they needed to reload, and they really did. Parker Brailsworth, who's someone that I've heard kind of mixed reviews, not sure if he's going to carve out that starting spot at center after all. We'll see, but Parker Brailsford, Jeremy Bernard, and Austin Mack all came from Washington over with Kalen DeBoer. They also got LT Overton from A&M, Damani Jackson from USC, Keon Saab from Michigan, all of whom are very likely to play for Bama in 2024. Damani Jackson was, I believe, recruited by Nick Saban, but keeping him recruited and keeping him on campus is absolutely huge. Keon Saab was a huge addition from Michigan. And despite all that change, the foundation on this team is very, very solid. When you look at this roster up and down, there are some holes, there are some worries for sure if you're a Bama fan, but you have a starting quarterback coming back in Jalen Milroe. You have two linebackers that I think is the best duo in the country when you talk about Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell. Tyler Booker on the front end of that offensive line is absolutely huge. It sounds like Caden Proctor is finding his way back to Bama, which is absolutely huge. And then Malachi Moore in the back end of that defense might be the heartbeat and the leader of this entire team. So I think when you look at this team, yes, there are worries that used to not be there when, Bama was at the height of their powers. But at the end of the day, they have a really, really solid group of not only incredible players, but incredible leaders at really important positions. So I think this team is in a position where, considering all of the people that found their way out of this program, they're in about as good a position as you could possibly hope if you are a Crimson Tide fan. But let's get to the staff building, because that might have been tougher than the portal building, if I'm being totally honest. The staff was a more arduous task than he thought it was going to be, I think, in Kalen DeBoer's case. He had two people on the staff that then about 2 weeks later, or really a whole 15 minutes after being in Tuscaloosa, found their way back to Seattle. And Scott Huff, the offensive line coach, and Ryan Grubb, the OC, both found their way back to Seattle, joined the Seahawks and Mike McDonald up there. So he had to figure that out. He elevated the tight end coach, Nick Sheridan, to the OC role, someone that I like a lot that seems to be really, really smart and really, really confident in his abilities in the little interviews that I've seen of him. And then Chris Kapilovich has taken over as the O-line coach, a guy with just so much experience in this sport. So two guys that, definitely not the hiccup that you wanted, but definitely a great group that he has in there. And then you look at the rest of it, and it just gets better. Eddie Reese and Robert Gillespie, keeping those two guys in Tuscaloosa is huge. Eddie Reese, the D-line coach, Robert Gillespie, the running back coach, two guys that were just remarkable, and that was definitely priority number one when he got on campus. And then this defensive staff is just remarkable. They got Kane Womack from the South Alabama. He was their head coach. He's coming in as the defensive coordinator. They got Maurice Lindquist, a head coach from Buffalo, to be their DB coach. Colin Hitzler is a linebacker coach that's just remarkable, a fast riser in this industry. And then on the offensive side of the ball, he brought over Jamarcus Shepard from Washington as well, who is one of the best wide receiver coaches in the entire country. So this staff, I think, despite having to go through that little hiccup, having to jump over a couple of hurdles, it's remarkably talented, both in elite development and also there's one big area where people were questioning Kalen DeBoer's ability to complete this job, and it's recruiting in the South, right? Everyone was worried, can he fit in? Can he, walk into a living room in Louisiana and eat a pot of gumbo and know what he's talking about? Because that is a part of recruiting now. And I think he's really filled the staff with a ton of people that kind of help that a little bit. So Eddie Reese, obviously, Robert Gillespie, obviously. They've been doing this at Tuscaloosa for quite some time, but Kane Womack is a huge pickup. He is someone that has so much energy, is someone that everyone seems to love to be around, and I think he's someone that if he's not a head coach in a couple of years, then something's wrong with the hiring process, I can tell you that. But I think this staff is about as good as you possibly could have hoped, especially with Nick Saban walking out the door and some of that, hiring ability where he just walks in the room and you say yes is now out the door. He did a remarkable job, especially on the defensive side of the ball, filling out a staff that he had to fill out entirely from outside sources. There was no one coming over from Washington, probably for good reason, to be fair, but filling that out with the people that he did is just remarkable. And then let's get to kind of the messaging of him and kind of the way he's carried himself over these last couple of weeks, because you can tell a lot about a coach by short interviews and just kind of how he handles himself on a day-to-day basis, and he seems as solid as they come. Kalen DeBoer just seems like he does not waver. I don't think a lot of people expected him to be the next head coach of Alabama. I don't think he expected to be the next head coach of Alabama, but he never really hesitated. He never seemed scared of this chance, of this opportunity. He never seemed worried of taking over for someone like Nick Saban, which was the talk of the town. No one wants to take over for a legend. Well, he did. He really wanted to be a part of Alabama, be a part of this program, and continue what Nick Saban started, which is something that he has made very clear in a couple of interviews over this last couple of weeks that I've seen. He really knows what this job is about. He knows the expectations that are going to be coming after him this next couple of years, and he's ready to deliver. I mean, the dude is 104-12 as a head coach. That's why he's had this remarkable rise, won the Pac-12 a year ago and knocked off Texas in the Sugar Bowl, and just lost in the title game because some guys just didn't have their best day that day. But I think when you're looking at all of these different things and you're looking at all of the ability that he has had throughout his coaching career, I think there's so many different ways to value a head coach. There's so many different ways to measure him up against other people, but on-field results is always the best way to go about things, and this dude just wins football games. There was not a soul picking Washington to go to the heights they did a year ago, at least non-Husky fans. I will put that caveat in there, but this dude made it happen, and he made it happen very, very quickly up there. So he's someone that is as consistent as they come. It seems like he just never wavers. There's never a panic button for him. He just always has a plan A, he has a plan B, he has a plan C. So he's someone that, although, this job, it's just started, and the real heat of this job is coming, in the fall in 2024 and beyond, but as of right now, he looks as steady as you could possibly be in this situation, because it's a really tough situation. There's no two ways about that. But finally, let's get to kind of the reality of what this situation is and what I kind of expect from Kalen DeBoer, not only in 2024, but as we kind of continue on in his time in Tuscaloosa. First of all, he's a remarkable head coach. He's done nothing but answer the bell, nothing but prove people that doubt him wrong. He is just incredible. I think he continues to impress me every time that I see him, but he isn't Nick Saban. No one is Nick Saban. That's something that Bama fans will fully understand at this point, but I think they'll have to learn kind of in a hard way in the next couple of years. Bama does have one of the best infrastructures in all of college football. Saban has done a remarkable job in building that, recruiting footprint, the ability to go to some of the boosters that you need to go to and get the money that you need to get is something that Bama is almost second to none in college football. The infrastructure is incredible if you win. That's the biggest if in the world because Nick Saban never really had to worry about that. After 2007, he was off to the races and he didn't look back. So I think this is going to be really interesting to see not only how does it develop into 2024, but how does it develop into 2026 version of Bama, because that's really the version of Bama that I'm more concerned with. I think this 2024 version is going to be just fine. It's going to be different. There's no two ways about that. I don't know if you guys are on Twitter a lot, but I don't know if you've seen Roll Tide Willie out at practices, doing his whole thing, and it's a different atmosphere. There's no two ways about that. I was watching a interview with Kalen DeBoer and Josh Pate where where Josh Pate said everyone in the building says it's different, not worse, but different, and I think that's the biggest thing that Bama fans are going to have to wrap their head around. It's not going to be the same Alabama, and it shouldn't be. There's no coach is going to be Nick Saban. No coach should walk in trying to be Nick Saban because you're going to come up short. There's no world where you don't come up short because that's the greatest coach of all time, and he might be for a really, really long time. It's going to take a lot for someone to pass him up. So Kalen DeBoer's just got to be Kalen DeBoer, and I think that's plenty to get the job done at Bama. And I talked about it. I think they're going to get off to a great start in 2024. Obviously, that will not define the Kalen DeBoer era in Alabama by any means, but I think they can get off to a start that will make this fan base fully believe in this guy and fully jump on board and do it to an extent where I think there are a lot of Bama fans that are plenty excited about this team and plenty excited about what Kalen DeBoer can do there, but there's still part of them that definitely misses Nick Saban, and it'll be weird when he's not on the sideline come fall. But at the end of the day, you have a guy that is as confident, is as accomplished, and has as much ability as many coaches across the country. Unless you were going to get Kirby Smart, which you weren't. I think Kalen DeBoer is about as good as you can do. He's someone that I trust to kind of handle all of this, even though, Bama and Washington are two entirely different worlds, entirely different jobs with totally different pressures and some things that he's going to have to get used to, including, learning a ton of people's names that he will meet every now and then and have to get money from, or do recruiting visits and do things a little bit differently than he did up in Washington. But he's capable of doing all of that. He is nothing if not a chameleon, if not someone that can adapt to his circumstances and handle them just beautifully. So while, he's not going to be Nick Saban, and while Bama in the long run will take a step back, I want that to be very, very clear. The idea that Bama is going to continue on a, multi-decade 7-title run is not something that's likely going to happen. Let's be totally honest with each other. But the ability of this guy is off the charts. The ability that he can get out of this team in 2024, I think they could win a title in 2024. But beyond that is really what we're going to find out if he's fully up for this job. I tend to believe he is. I tend to believe he is as good of a hire as they possibly could have made for this role, but 2024 won't tell you the tale. 2025 and 6 and 7 will tell you who he's going to be to Bama fans in the long run, and if he can fill the just massive shoes that were left behind by Nick Saban. But as of right now, if you're a Bama fan, I'd feel pretty good. You are in a position where you have one of the best coaches in the country. You have one of the best rosters in the country. You have one of the best infrastructures in the country. You are still Bama. For this second, you are still Bama. Now, that can change pretty quickly in the fall, but for the time being, I would feel just fine if I was a Crimson Tide fan. But We're going to take our second break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit of a betting trend that has happened around the 2025 national title game. So stick with us, and we will be right back with that.